Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, September 18th, and this is a joint committee meeting of the Transportation and Environment Committee and the Public Safety Committee, and we have an all-star panel in front of us to talk about public safety and public transit. We know that our ride-on system and our WMATA system are exceptional, not only throughout this region, but nationally, and nationally known for the quality of service. And we know that transit in general relies on frequent, safe, and reliable operations so that residents can safely get around our community. And the important word there is safely. We want the vehicles to be safe, and we want what happens inside those vehicles to be safe as well. And the nexus for this conversation was that there have been a number of incidents of late where residents have grown concerned. They've reached out to the council, and the chair of the Public Safety Committee, myself, and other members of the council thought it important to have an update, to hear from WMATA, hear from Ride On, hear from our respective public safety personnel about the state of public transit and people being able to safely ride our systems, because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want to make sure people continue riding our public transit and feel safe while doing so. We'll turn it over to the Chair of Public Safety Committee for any comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you all for being here today. And there is not going to be a vote. This is a briefing, and that's what we need on this topic. And I want to say very publicly, thank you very much for all that you do, and the people that are associated with you for keeping us safe. And of course, we always hear of the example when someone was not safe. We don't hear about the thousands and thousands and thousands of examples when people have been safe on public transportation. And I also, during your discussions, if you could tell us or remind us how the coordination works through your various departments, because obviously there's, I guess, at least three, maybe more, police departments and security departments that are involved with this. And when there's that tragedy, how do we come together? And when there's not a tragedy, how are you kept informed with each other? And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Great. Unless colleagues have any opening comments they'd like to make, I see Ms. Farag is ready to get the conversation started.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, and as Chair Katz had pointed out, thousands and thousands of people ride safely every single day, and daily ridership for the ride-on bus system averages about 46,000 riders daily. WMATA bus and rail system also serves the county. The Red Line daily ridership is about 36,000 from county stations, and daily WMATA bus ridership averages about 29,000 on bus lines that are serving Montgomery County. So I just wanted to mention that to put this in context. However, as Chair Glass also mentioned, there have been a couple of high-profile incidents recently, right? And they capture the attention, and they are kind of following the trends of the crime in the county at this point. Violent crime was up by 7% as of June 30th. I don't have third quarter estimates yet. And it's a lot of the same patterns of the types of crime. So crime data and incident data have been provided by Montgomery County Department of Transportation, WMATA, Metro Transit Police, and Montgomery County Police. And there's some synopses on page 2 to look over. DOT in particular has employees assaulted and injured, which I think is very critical to keep in mind. It's not just the public who are affected by some of these incidents. For WMATA, they've provided adult and juvenile arrest information, and I had asked for 2019 through the current date because I always want a pre-COVID benchmark to show everything that happened during COVID is a little bit wonky. So total incidents on both rail and parking lot for WMATA and buses and bus stops increased this year, with 535 incidents for the first 6 months of 2023 compared to 373 for all of 2022. Those numbers haven't reached pre-COVID experience when reported incidents totaled more than 1,100 in 2019. For 2023, however, there are some notable increases, and that includes robbery, motor vehicle theft, drug narcotics violation, trespassing, and in particular weapons violations. Other offenses are on track to possibly surpass 22 data, and that includes aggravated assault and disorderly conduct. Montgomery County Police Department also provides law enforcement services to the area bus stops and metro stops, as well as their parking lots. They've provided additional information which shows similar trends. These are all available for you on circles 1 through 9. Total crime has not reached pre-COVID totals again. There were 125 incidents back in 2019. There were only 91 incidents that MCPD indicates in 2022. But incidents do continue to trend upward for this year. In 2023, simple assaults totaled 13 compared to 17 for all of 2022. Motor vehicle theft may outpace last year's experience, and drug and narcotic violations already have, with 12 in the first half of the year compared to 4 last year. There are some potential discussion questions listed on page 3, but at this point I thought it'd be helpful if the different agencies provide a brief summary of their experience and what they're looking for moving forward.
Thank you for that high-level overview. And again, for everybody following this conversation, all of that data are contained in the first few circles of the packet, 1 through 6 or 7. So thank you. Dr. Orland, do you have anything else? No? Okay. Not sure who we want to start with. I think we should start with the transit agencies themselves. So let's first hear from Ride On and MCDOT.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. I wanted to start with an overview of our service. Ride On, as you know, operates the Ride On, the Extra, the Flex, and the Flash. We are a growing agency. We are expanding the Flash service to North Bethesda, 355 New Hampshire, as well as VS Mill is the 4th. Additionally, we are in the implementing stages of our Great Seneca Transit Network, which will also be a Ride-On Extra service. We anticipate that coming online in 2024. We are a transit agency with 900 employees, 385 buses, 3 depots, Nicholson, Gettysburg, and Silver Spring depots. We operate 82 routes. We also operate 2 metro routes on weekends. Since May, we've been averaging about 55,000 riders for each weekday. Pre-COVID, we were right around 79,000 riders each weekday. So we're growing. We obviously have a partnership with Metro and other regional partners in the area. So for us, talking about safety, safety is paramount, not only for our employees, but for the customers who we service. We do have a full-fledged training plan for all employees, the bus operators, the coordinators, the supervisors, central staff. Any new bus operator that comes into our system goes through a 5-week training class initially. A lot of the training is a classroom setup where they do all aspects of, whether it's customer service, how to handle any incidents, whether it's assaults, disruptive behaviors on the buses. They know what to do for each and every one of those instances. This is obviously in addition to on-the-road training that they go through, how to navigate the buses, the different routes that we operate, how to help customers get on the bus safely and alight the buses. So it's a full-fledged training program. And then, of course, they do have refreshers that they go through every once in a while when it's determined by the supervisor that the said employee needs to be retrained for one reason or the other. So the protocols, I can just give you a brief overview of what we expect our bus operators to do. When they observe any situation on the buses, we do have a central communications team who are stationed at the location where they observe each and every bus. So this team does have the global positioning of each and every bus that we operate in the county. So they know where those buses are located. The operators know that the tools that they have on the buses to address each situation or incident. So they either push a button, which is an emergency button that goes directly to that central communication. So that button is pushed for the highest profile incidents, maybe somebody being assaulted or something like that. Then central communication takes over immediately. Depending on that incident, they can call the police, they can call fire rescue, emergency services, and request that they assist us at the location of the incident. Operators are not expected to engage the customers who are, in a situation just to avoid being assaulted. Now, there's been situations where the operators see a situation where they feel like, I can talk to this person and just kind of calm the person down. And they have. And several instances, it's worked. This is why they are waiting for the fire rescue or the police or the EMS. We also have the central alert. We have coordinators stationed at different locations in the county, which we call zones. So they're there, and they have zones 1 through 9, and these represent all the routes that we have in the county. So the nearest coordinator to that incident is alerted and dispatched to that location. So the coordinator's role is to observe, because they ultimately are the ones who put together the incident report. So they observe what's going on. In some cases, they engage with the clients, not physically or anything like that. They try to talk to those clients to say, hey, either come off the bus, let's talk some more, or they at the situation. If initially the central communication did not anticipate the situation to be something that's high profile, and maybe they did not contact the police or anything like that. When the coordinator arrives on the scene, it's there after the observation, they are the ones who will then call the police or fire rescue, just because the central communication was not fully aware of what was going on before this coordinator arrived. So depending on what this situation is, the police arrives, if it's an accident that happened, we take images of the accidents just for documentation. We get the accident report from the police for documentation. If a passenger, for instance, has some health emergency, just yesterday we had a passenger sitting on one of our bus stops, and immediately the bus arrives, the passenger stood up to get on the bus and fell flat on her face. The bus operator did not have to contact central communication because he knew this was an emergency. So he called EMS service, and then called the police, and then alerted the central communication about the incident. So it varies, but what we try to do, we have, as it relates to incident, I can tell you the training has a full 8-page document that kind of goes into details about each and everything that they could possibly experience while they're out there. A customer being disruptive, a customer that they feel maybe has, overdose. Operators do have NACAN training also to assist in those emergencies. Customers fighting each other, drunken customers, they have, the different steps that we expect them to go through to kind of de-escalate the situation before the authorities arrive to handle it in a way that kind of quells it finally. So those are, the kind of steps that we continue to encourage with our employees. These are reinforced continuously for all the operators. Again, safety of the operators as well as the people, customers that we transport, paramount for us, and that's what we continue. We're working on several areas now to enhance our technological ability to be able to see what's going on in the buses real time. So you can drop in on any bus and see the videos of those buses, and just as you're observing, and I'll stop there and let my colleagues go into details of the.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oji. I was going to clarify or ask for clarification, but you picked up on it at the end that all the incidents that you referenced could happen, do happen, might happen. There are cameras to ensure the safety and recall on all of our vehicles. So thank you for that. Next, we'll go to WMATA and Mr. Scott.
Sure. Good morning, President Glass, council members. Pleased to be here. Charlie Scott with WMATA. We do many of the same things that Ride-On does, so I will not reiterate what Sam mentioned. But basically, for Metro, I hope you've all heard the message that over the years that we want to provide a safe, frequent, reliable service. Safety has always been the first paramount part of what we try to deliver across the region. And again, we recognize that is both operationally, making sure that the system itself operates safely, but then also that our customers have a safe experience riding the bus and rail system. So we're pleased to partner with police agencies across the DMV to help promote that safe service. And then, of course, we also have sworn officers of our Metro Transit Police Department who are certified in Maryland, Virginia, and the district to enforce the laws of the jurisdictions where we serve, and proud of the work that they do on a daily basis, helping to keep our customers safe. And then one more thing I'd like to highlight, I think we all know that if you walk through a somewhat empty park versus a park with a lot of people, you always feel more safe walking through the park with a lot of people. So also building ridership is part of our effort to help promote a more safe system. So pleased to report that last week we had some of the highest ridership days since COVID. So pleased to see more and more riders across the system choosing to ride Metrobus and Metro Rail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. We'll work our way down the panel and hear from our law enforcement agencies now, and we'll start with Deputy Chief Boehm from Metro Transit Police.
Good morning. Thank you, Deputy Chief Boehm on behalf of Chief Michael Anzalo. As was stated by Mr. Scott, we are very committed to not only lowering crime, as the stats show that we are up in crime in 2023, but we are also committed to lowering disorder, the fear of crime, that is also equally as important. We are down about 80 officers for our department, so it is imperative that we rely upon the partnerships with our other agencies. And as was stated, some of the technology that we use, our camera system is very robust, not only in the stations but on the buses, and we are very good at getting images of criminals, pushing those out, and we are very successful in making apprehensions based on that, and also working with our local partners to create some of that. Some of the strategies that we've used this year as we saw crime rising was one thing we do is point of entry policing, which is where we stop a lot of the criminal acts before they come into the station. And the biggest thing that we do for that is fair enforcement. So we've committed to overtime details. We've stopped a lot of actors who either have warrants, weapons, a lot of drug usage as well. And a lot of this stuff is stopped prior to people coming into the system through our fair enforcement. We've done very well on that in some of our hotspot stations, such as Silver Spring, Wheaton, Glenmont, Shady Grove as well. Another strategy we've used, because in the district, we've partnered with Metropolitan Police to have them work overtime in our stations. That's allowed us to free up some officers to then travel to some of our surrounding jurisdictions, and kind of allowed us to do more proactive policing. Obviously, the big issue, another big issue that everyone's focused on in not only the region but the country, are the auto thefts. That is another a big issue. We've increased overtime details in the lots, doing either traffic enforcement or just having plain clothes look into the garages and the lots, which can, as you know, the metro stations are kind of large, so we try to go in there, obviously focused on Hyundais and Kias, which is the big focus of the criminals. That's shown some success for us. Obviously, it's still a challenge, but that's one thing that we've really been able to focus on. Another thing on the disorder side is, stated earlier, a lot of the drug usage and homeless that tend to congregate at our stations. We have a new crisis intervention team that we've started up, so it's growing. It's we just hired we should be about 10 to 12 at this point, and what they'll do is they'll go out and patrol and try to hook some of these individuals up with some services, social services, getting some food, some housing, and whatnot. Independent of law enforcement, when we have to come in to assist, we will, but it's also just to try to help those people out, get them out of the situation they're in. And then obviously all our officers now have Narcan, as was stated by the gentleman earlier. That's helped us a lot with some of the overdoses and assisting in that way. That's all I have, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that, and we'll open it up for questions after everyone makes their presentations. Chief Jones.
Good morning. Thank you for having us this morning. One thing I will just share is that I think it's very important is we have an excellent working relationship with Metro Transit Police in regards to responding to incidents that occur on our subways or even on the buses. So with that system that collectively we work well together and communicate often about the different crime trends that may be occurring in those particular locations or of any other concern. Also with our ride-on system, again, excellent communication amongst those that need to process any concerns of safety. Officers are understand that they will respond, and they do respond to any incident that occur on our buses in a timely manner. I will say that the camera systems that are on our buses and our metro system are very useful in helping to resolve situations and also to solve crimes that occur on those on the buses and the metro system. So it's very fruitful in that regard that we're able to see a lot of incidents that occur, and we utilize them a variety of ways. As we know, as is noted in the packet that Ms. Farag put together, that there, when you look at the areas of concern where your higher incidents are occurring, more responses to calls for service, particularly I would note, for example, in the Wheaton Metro Station, the Silver Spring Metro Station. I'll highlight there where we have additional personnel that is assigned in that general vicinity. We have our Central Business District teams that respond quickly. We know a lot of incidents occur in and around the metro system there. So we, again, officers are well equipped to respond in a quick manner, understanding that Metro Transit has challenges with personnel that may not always be at that metro stop. Sometimes they are. And if they're not, then we are there to help quickly respond. We've also utilized our Violent Crime Information Center to be an added resource for those types of locations because of their proximity to multiple cameras outside of those stations, that sometimes we can identify and have identified suspects that are involved in crimes either, again, in or around the metro system. So I think that's very important for us to recognize that in those situations. Of course, all of the metro stations are in our designated beats, so the beat officers who respond there will respond to metro stations. We have, in times, for example, on high alerts, if there are incidents in our metro stations are concerns of safety. We have added details, additional officers to those metro stations for high visibility to make sure that our passengers feel at ease that there is a police presence should there be any alerts there. So we have traditionally done that, and we really kind of maintain the intelligence and making sure that if there's anything forthcoming that we need to add those additional resources, we will do so without hesitation. I'd also note that, for example, we have additional support in the city of Rockville because the Twin Brook Metro, the Rockville Metro, which is right here, as you know, are within the city limits. So you have additional police support there as well for those metro stations. And just going back to Metro Transit, I note that we've had a memorandum of understanding with Metro Transit for quite some time. In fact, it goes back to even the most updated one was in 1995. But I have instructed my staff in order for us to coordinate with the Metro Transit Police Department to update that memorandum of understanding, so we make sure that there's clear understanding. And for example, when we had a recent homicide at the Wheaton Metro station, which is a prime example here, Metro Transit was very quick to respond to the scene. They were there almost simultaneously as we were there. But at the end of the day, any incident that occurs on Metro Transit's property, even after they respond, we are the investigating agency, and then we work collectively hand in hand in order to resolve that. And in fact, that crime was solved rather quickly, again, because there was additional resources that were made available to us, such as the camera systems, that we were able to identify the suspects in the metro station. And the officers from Montgomery County had previous dealings with the suspect, so therefore it gave us an advantage of being able to identify that individual in a quicker manner as it related to the closure of that case. So again, I am very proud of the relationships that we've had over the years. I know there's always the changing of the guard at the highest levels, but again, we've maintained an excellent relationship throughout those many changes. And again, we're prepared to answer any other concerns about safety. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for those comments and sharing some insights into how the coordination is maintained and the communication. And I'm glad to hear about those ongoing efforts. You know, the bottom line is that our operators are on the front lines and dealing with members of our community just like the rest of us are. And there are different difficulties and different situations. And before this, I did not know that our bus operators were trained in using Narcan. You know, we know that health officials and even teachers and school administrators need to use that, but it makes absolute sense that there might be emergencies on our buses and that they need to be trained as well. You know, just looking at the data, taking a step back, clearly the trend lines over the last number of years there have been a decrease in incidents on transit, and I would be surprised if it weren't other than decreased ridership, right? And a direct correlation there, that as fewer people have ridden either the bus or metro rail systems because of the pandemic and all the other reasons, ridership has decreased and incidence has decreased. But this year, we're now seeing the upward trend. Is that basically just because that there's more people who are taking public transit? Is that your interpretation of the data, or is it something else? And I don't know who to. I'll address our transit operators, I guess.
Yeah, I think on our buses, you know, it has to do with increased ridership. As I mentioned, you know, pre-COVID, we were doing about 79,000 riders on each weekday. We dropped way below that at the height of the pandemic. Just prior to May, we were still at 46,000 riders each weekday. We're now, since May, we've been about 55,000 riders each weekday. So the more people riding, the more incidents we see on the buses. And just an additional example, since the 3rd of September through yesterday, we've seen about 8 incidents on the buses. And these include, somebody assaulting a bus operator, disruptive behavior, those things, including the lady from yesterday. Those are the incidents we've seen. Just so in 14 days, we've had 8 incidents. So the numbers just kind of vary depending on the day.
Same for WMATA?
Yes, sir. So as crime, although is increasing, the per million riders has actually gone down throughout this year, the number of incidents per rider. So yes, there's more incidents because there's more people in the system. What we're seeing in some of the trends that other rail agencies or transit agencies throughout the country have seen that same spike after the pandemic as riders started to come back. So it's in line with what we're seeing throughout the country.
Thank you. Last question I have before I turn it over to colleagues. In the WMATA data, there's 2 sets of crime delineations, Part 1 and Part 2. And within Part 2, an overwhelming majority are all other offenses. Can you explain what all other offenses are?
Those are there's different. I'll tell you that the majority of them is fair enforcement. So that is a type of crime. There's other small types of crimes that are involved in there. Actually, I was asking that same question yesterday as I was reviewing my data. But the majority of those are the fair enforcement. Also, you'll see that a lot of the the increase in drug arrests or drug enforcement and some of the weapons offenses. That's because we're being proactive. So you'll see those numbers rise, but actually a good thing, because it's not like they weren't around before. It's just that now that every time you make an arrest or make an enforcement for one, now it becomes a statistic. So that's what that is.
Thank you. Chair Katz?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And again, thank you all for everything you do. Obviously, you're not exempt from the rest of the world, whether it's someone that parks or whatever in your lots. Motor vehicle theft has increased everywhere, and I guess recently we saw on the news that Hyundai and Kia and others are occurring everywhere, and I have a feeling that you aren't exempt from that as well. So we all need to work together to try to help out on that. The only other question that I have is that I know, as an example, WMATA, you work with many different jurisdictions and in Virginia and DC as well. Are there any other jurisdictions that have resources that Montgomery County does not have that you would like us to have to be able to be of even greater assistance than what we are today?
I don't think so. Montgomery County's been a great partner over the years.
That's what we wanted to hear, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that I will say that in the district they have done is we just got the memorandum with them is for the part-time. So they're able to work part-time in our stations. And we've also done that with some of the other jurisdictions such as Cheverly, Greenbelt Police. So that's just an extension that we're offering to all our partners. If they're able to, can afford to allow some of their officers to work part-time in our stations, that would be the only thing. But on a day-to-day basis, working with Montgomery County, we go hand in hand. Our district commander talks with their district commanders where we fall in line. Our detectives actually last week just made a multiple robbery, some on us, some on them, apprehension, working hand in hand with them, as well as our crime analysts talk every day. So Montgomery County's been a really great partner throughout the years.
Well, let me just say very publicly, if there's a time that you know of something else that we should be adding to be of assistance, please let us know. Don't let it wait. We want to try to make certain that your safety is our safety as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Thank you so much, not only for being here today, but to make our transit safer. I appreciate that. Just a couple questions. I appreciate the statement I think that Chief made about alerts and putting more people at stations. What about the communication, more informal communication? So if Montgomery County is seeing an increase in crime, or maybe there is some young adults or gang related, and you anticipate perhaps an increase in crime, not raising to the level of an alert, how do you communicate that with the bus operators and WMATA and just this general feel that there might be trouble brewing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think we can always look at improving upon is to try to make sure that the messaging gets out to the relevant parties. When it's very interesting, most of the crimes that are occurring around our metro stations that we have found have been really a lot of impromptu acts of individuals who decide to, ride in the system or are utilizing the system as sort of the escape route, you might say, of their, their criminal involvement in that regard. But whenever we've seen any trends that we think that's necessary, we want to be able to communicate to our internal partners to make sure, because we have in fact utilized staff, at our metro stations to maybe alert them about certain types of individuals who might be passing through the metro, that they might be able to notify Metro Transit. We've done that with staffing where there might be a danger to an individual that might have been involved in a very high-risk incident. We try to pass that information not only to Metro Transit Police, but also to their staff, because those individuals are eyes and ears, right, of who passes through the system, as well as the train operators. So those and bus drivers from that standpoint. So again, I think one of the things we always try to remind our folks that if we do see such trends, that we are putting them on high alert to make sure that the internal partners are aware.
Mm-hmm. And I would assume that it's a delicate balance between conveying to the community that transit is safe, and we want to increase ridership. We want people to use transit, but we also want them to take any personal precautions to make sure that they're safe. So from a ad campaign or communication campaign, how do you make sure that people know that it's safe, but also take personal precaution? And I would ask maybe Mr. Scott to, and right on as well.
Certainly, thank you for the question. So one thing we do want riders to know is that we do have a way to contact transit police without just calling, but you can text my MTPD, so that if you don't feel safe calling, when you're witnessing something in the system, that's another avenue.
Say that one more time.
It's MY MTPD, so my MTPD, and then that message will get to our transit police, and they can act on that at that point. And definitely, we want riders to be aware of their surroundings. So, if when you're carrying a purse or other items, keep them closer to yourself. And, even when you're on your personal devices, be aware of your surroundings, because, people will try to, unfortunately, people do try to steal things, and you just have to be aware. And it's not just unique to transit. This is kind of a universal, anywhere you go kind of issue. But of course, when you're on a train or on a bus, if someone snatches something from you as the doors are closing, it's harder to get that item back. But definitely, be aware of your surroundings.
And it's sort of the same thing. We obviously want people to ride the service. The actions that we take when incidents occur, the ways we want people to see that indeed their safety is what we're thinking about. But we expect, like Charlie said, people to be aware of their surroundings. They see we have cameras, but we hate for any incident to occur. Even once, it's just too much. So we do have some signs on the interior of our buses that just kind of lists out what the passengers, we call them Bill of Rights, what's expected of the passengers and what the passengers should expect from us. So those are in the interior of all our buses. So and that's our approach.
Thank you. Councilmember Lutke and then Stewart.
Thank you. I'm going to stick on the see it, say it, right? So several of us were in the UK this summer, and there was no way to not hear on every train, see it, say it, solve it was their catchphrase, right? But they would then explain what each of those meant, meaning the solve it part was for the authorities to solve it. And this was, there were signs in the stations, et cetera, but it was also played regularly on the trains. And I do ride Metro, but I don't recall hearing it on our trains. Are there any audio announcements on our trains or buses that remind people of that? I know there's signage, but for those who process better from an audio perspective, do we have that?
We don't on our buses, but like you said, we do have signage. And I believe prior to the pandemic, we did have a robust campaign where we not only had, customer appreciation events where we distributed materials, whether it's umbrellas, shirts that said, if you see something, say something. But just make the customers aware that there are eyes out there, in addition to the processes we have in place to address those situations. So we've had campaigns, but we don't have any enunciations on the buses that kind of say that. So, but that's a good idea, and thank you for bringing
Yeah.
that.
And what about inside the Metro stations or on Metro trains? Does anybody know?
There is audio. I know it's not as much as it could be, but as was stated, visual is probably more and more. We do more of the messaging on signs, and also a lot of our officers. One of the details that we'll have the officers do is hand out take ones, meet and greets, have conversations with folks, especially when we do either bike lock exchanges or even car lock with the stolen autos. What we'll do is we'll give them a vehicle lock, but then that's an opportunity for a conversation on how to make, prevent yourself from becoming a victim. And we'll do that also with robberies a lot of the times, as was stated by Mr. Scott. It's inattention. It's because we have these mobile devices where our faces are in them all the time. I'm guilty of it myself. And we try to get our officers out there on the trains, high visibility, handing out take ones to say, hey, we noticed that you're in your phone. Just remember that you could be a victim if you're not paying attention.
Gotcha. And the Councilmember Backham asked the question about bulletins or alerts, and you do all have bulletins that come that advise about breaking issues related to any domestic terrorism, homeland security, trends, things like the Kia and the Hyundai issues, and those come out through law enforcement channels they're labeled for official use only or law enforcement sensitive, and then you all determine how you're advising the staff who have to interact with the public on what's best to do. Is that right?
Yes. So especially when it comes to information sharing, as Chief Jones has mentioned earlier, we want to get the eyes and ears that are out there, our bus operators, our train operators, our maintenance staff, to see suspects or incidents that we obviously we have to scrub it a little bit for law enforcement sensitivity purposes. But the more we can get them acting as eyes and ears, the better. And we do that a lot. We'll get those messages out. We communicate with our bus leadership for suspects, bolos that are created from our camera systems. And so a lot of times, as in the past where it was more leaned on, don't share, we're finding out we're getting more
Right.
bang for our buck by sharing information and being
Right.
more transparent. absolutely.
And you used an acronym. I know what it means, but can you tell them what a BOLO means?
Be on the lookout. So
Thanks.
when we'll get they use the camera system, and if they capture a good image of the suspect or a person of interest, what we'll do is we'll create a be on the lookout flyer from a snippet. We'll take the best image, make a flyer, and then add information on who to contact, what detective, or just contact our 911, which is 202-962-2121. So again, it's kind of like a machine. It's a cycle. We'll get it out, and we'll try to push that images out. And we've had great success with doing that. Again, sharing with our local partners in law enforcement, but really also sharing with our internal partners in the other divisions within the authority.
And for the cameras, those are visual only, correct? There's no audio recording on the cameras on the buses or in the train systems?
In the buses, there's audio.
There is audio?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and there's a notice that's in the bus that reminds folks that they're being recorded. How long is the material retained? How long is the whatever you're able to gather from the cameras retained?
It depends on the I think rail's longer than bus. We also have them in our rail cars themselves, and they are all on different systems. They have different time periods. But what we also have is a staff, whether it be our crime scene search officers who are trained, cross-trained in that, or the video unit themselves. They'll go out pretty quickly that day before that time period loops and pull it so that it stays forever. So we're doing that all the time as it goes. I believe, rail, you may have up to 30 to 60 days. On bus, it's shorter, maybe within weeks. But again, we don't really hit that time period because we're picking them up as it's happening. Like I said, it's like a machine, the way they do it, get the images out, and we've had a lot of great success with just being transparent like that and getting the images and the notifications out.
I have one last question. So, we've talked about different types of disruptions or criminal activity or things that are happening in and around the stations or on the buses or on the trains themselves. There's a lot of different reasons why someone might appear agitated, right? Whether it's a substance issue, alcohol, bad day, or a behavioral health condition. And so what is the protocol that the drivers or station operators have in place for dealing when they're observing an agitated person who might need some other assistance? What is the protocol?
So for our bus operators, once they see anything that seems out of place, somebody could be, like you said, having a medical emergency, the first thing they do is contact Central Communication. They will pull the bus over. They'll open all the doors on the buses, provide additional information to Central Communication on this behavior that they are witnessing. So it's at that point Central Communication makes the determination whether it's something that needs the police to be alerted, emergency services, to fire rescue, whatever the case may be. But the training also that the operators go through addresses those kind of issues. They need to observe the person. Operators are usually constantly looking in the mirror,
Right.
that's
Right.
observing everybody that's on the bus as they are driving, in a state where they're not distracted from driving. But they understand that not all actions will be criminal.
Right.
So they're trained for those.
And so when you say they call EMS or they call police, are they, after they've made a determination, are they calling the 911 call center, or are they making an independent determination as to which public safety provider, whether it's mobile crisis or EMS or police, who need to be called? Who's making the determination?
So our Central Communication staff, and at that location, they have direct numbers to the police.
Gotcha.
To emergency service, that's above and beyond. Now the bus operator themselves can dial 911
Right.
on the spot and get that. But the Central Communication is more in tune with who they deal with at the police. Sometimes it could be if the incident is occurring in Rockville, then it's Rockville police. Tacoma area, then it's Tacoma. So those
Right.
information that Central does have directly to loop in who's needed.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Stewart.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for the presentations today. I wanted to go back to a little bit on the coordination, and Chief Jones, thank you for talking about the coordination, and particularly, in a place like downtown Silver Spring. We have the Metro there, and I know great officers in the Central Business District there, but one of the things they deal with, I know, are grab and goes. And so we have a Central Business District, people go into one of the shops there, grab stuff, and head towards the Metro. And that I believe we've seen somewhat of an uptick of that recently. If you could go into specifically some of how you coordinate with Metro Transit on that, and some of the things that we've been able to do to address that. And anything else, particularly around the Silver Spring. I represent Silver Spring area, so anything else around the Silver Spring Metro, much appreciated.
Sure. So, Councilmember Stewart, one of the, I think, important aspects of our coordinating efforts is the communication and how quickly that has to occur. So, as was mentioned about our Emergency Communications Center, although we're not on the same radio system as the Metro Police Department, Transit Police are, we can communicate directly from our Emergency Communications Center to their Emergency Communications Center in order to coordinate efforts. So if we have something that we have, for example, an individual who might do a grab and go, run directly to the Silver Spring Metro, looking to jump on a train, as an example, that is how we began sort of the communication process of, what train are they jumping on, which direction in which they're traveling, if we're sort of in hot pursuit, you might say. And so that way there is, because as you know, if it's the Silver Spring station and they're traveling south into the District of Columbia, which is the next stop, then we don't have authority in the District of Columbia, but Metro Transit has the authority for it and potentially to make an arrest depending upon the seriousness of the crime. If they're traveling north, of course, then that also, not only are you getting additional resources from Metro Transit possibly, but you're also receiving additional resources from the, which is the Wheaton station, is Forest Glen. They're going up towards Wheaton. We're going to have officers in near around the metro stations there responding in order to try to locate the individual. So there again are the communication ends of really reaching out to our dispatch center in order for them to be able to deliver messaging across the board. I think there's still conversation about our radio systems, about how we could better communicate, sort of with other agencies. There are sort of, and it's something I think we have had these conversations in the Washington Council of Government Chiefs meetings about these very things. I don't know what the protocol is for some of the other agencies, such as the District of Columbia, which I would assume Metro has probably a more intrinsic involvement in because it's right in the midst of the city. But this is one of the challenges again we have. But to be quite frank, I've never heard officers complain about the failure to be able to communicate with Metro Transit in any way that's been ineffective. So.
And if I can just quickly point out, it's not just for crime, but if we have missing people, we also then forward that information to Metro, because we know we have such a robust system that a lot of our people go up and down on Metro and ride on everything else. So we do forward that information to them as well, not
Great.
just for crime issues.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. One of the other issues, and this is around our different Metro stations, is and bus as well, not just the rail system, is our built environment and lighting and how, and we're going to talk about our pedestrian master plan right after this, but how safe people feel accessing. and going to it. And I know, you know, a big part of making sure people feel safe in fighting crime is also looking at our built environment. And we haven't talked about that much, and I guess I'm curious how much we are looking at that when we are thinking about safety issues.
So we have about 5,400 bus stops in the county. About 10% of those do have shelters, and we ensure that, you know, all our bus shelters are well lit. Unfortunately, what we encounter is you know, damage to the property by people. Whether it's the shelter panels, the lighting, people, I mean, the shelters have been shot at. So there's all those things that include. Now, we do have a contract with a vendor who immediately will go upgrade the lighting, fix the panels, and in those cases, we do also rely, that's one of the, you know, things we rely on our passengers for, because they get to a bus stop, they see it's not lit, a lot of them will call and say, our staff, passengers facility staff, proactively go through all of those properties to see that they are all functional to the, you know, the way we want them to. So incidents do occur that, you know, where there are damages to those, but yes, our bus shelters should be well lit, clean, debris, you know, trash cans emptied, you know, daily, and those occur. So it's just that through those processes that we identify ones that need any attention to them.
And I'll just add that it's been a number of years, but we did a number of years ago, as part of our energy savings, actually upgrade lighting in our parking garages. So we were able to provide brighter lighting, but also more energy efficient lighting, similar to what we've done also in the rail stations, underground rail stations as well.
And also, just getting back to the coordination, you all, Deputy Chief Bohm, you talked about the crisis intervention teams now that are coming online. And are they working with the crisis teams we have and the partners that we're working with, such as like Pathways, Bethesda Cares? Is there coordination going on there?
There is. So we did, and in addition to, like you were saying also earlier, with some of the environmental factors as well, we did a CEPTED, crime prevention through environmental design study at Silver Spring, and also brought our crisis intervention. And I believe they were working hand in hand with, and I can't, forgive me for the group, but I know our outreach bureau commander was working with them, and it was a partnered effort along with Montgomery County Police over at Silver Spring. And I believe they did one also at, I want to say, the Bethesda station.
Great. I'd love to follow up on the environmental study for Silver Spring when you have a chance. And then finally on WMATA, I know over the summer, and I don't know if you've continued, was it called the Ambassador Program? To have folks like on the trains. I remember seeing that, but I didn't know if that was going to continue into the fall.
No, absolutely. And so for everyone's reference, these are new Metro employees that they're wearing the yellow shirts, and they're there to basically be an extension of our staff to help our customers, tourists, whoever it is, using the system, better understand the system, and also just additional eyes and ears out there in the system. So that is an addition to our workforce, and it's definitely a permanent, as far as we know, a permanent addition. Of course, we also have some budget challenges, as you're aware, council member, but the intent is that they are a new part of our workforce.
Great, terrific, because I think, Mr. Scott, as you talked about before, the more people and the more people that riders know they can go to for information, the safer they feel on Metro. And I know Metro is also undergoing a study of signage to make it clearer for people so they're more easily aware of their surroundings, where they are, especially if they're not riders all the time. So those are all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you all for being here today and for all the information that you've brought for us. Appreciate especially Chief Jones' information about the protocol and procedures and the communications when we have situations like the grab and goes, as Councilmember Stewart mentioned. We had a similar recent situation in my district, which ties into the question I'm about to ask you, because the person who we ended up pulling over the bus for was a juvenile who was on their way to school. So I wanted to get your insights around the juvenile arrests, the types of situations that we're seeing, any other types of patterns or anything else that might be useful to us. Are we seeing patterns of, and whether you have data or just anecdotal observations, but are we seeing some of the same kids repeating? Is that showing up in the numbers? Any information you could give us would be great, as we're seeing that the juvenile arrest numbers are now up to and exceeding what they were pre-COVID.
I can tell you anecdotally what we're seeing, and this is not just in Montgomery County but throughout, is there's an increased juvenile and violent crime and more serious crime. The robbery coordinated arrest that we made last week was a 14-year-old who had committed at least I think that week that we're working on 2 or 3 on Montgomery County and at least 1 on us, and these were robberies. So we're seeing that some of the more violent crime that's occurring with the juveniles, and obviously the drug usage and the Kia Hyundai challenge is predominantly a juvenile. It's a TikTok challenge, so that's more of a juvenile crime. So yes, we are seeing an increase in juvenile crime.
Councilmember Mink, I am not, I don't have any specific data on juvenile crime and the types of crimes that we're seeing involving. I mean, we know that we've had some incidents of robbery and some incidents of what I would probably consider more disorderly type conduct, that may be occurring on buses or maybe occurring at metro stations. But we don't have any specific data, nothing that has really raised concern for us amongst the youth that are riding our transit systems from that perspective. I'm not sure if Ride On is seeing anything specific as it relates to that, but there's been really no trends per se that we're aware of.
I would say it's that the same thing for us. We're not seeing, disruptive behaviors solely by youth. It just cuts across all the riders and the age groups. So.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And certainly this is a conversation that goes beyond transit, as I'm hearing from some of the officers on the ground. And in regards to the case with the 14-year-old that you were mentioning, I think that was one that I was just speaking to some of our officers about, and hearing that with some of these kids, you're seeing the same faces over and over again, and that calls a lot of questions for us about what we can do to prevent that from being the case. So thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for the good questions, thoughtful conversation, and clearly there's more discussion to be had. I know the Public Safety Committee has a number of committee sessions scheduled over the next few weeks to dive deeper into public safety as it relates to all aspects of life, and so we wanted to have this conversation responding to community concerns. Appreciate all the work that you were doing, and especially appreciate our transit operators who are working right now and not able to be with us, but all of us making sure that they too are safe so that we can safely get around our community. So thank you all for this really important update. The Joint Committee is going to recess. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then reconvene as the T&E Committee to take up the pedestrian master plan. Thank you.
Demonstrations for